What's up, NIO family? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with NIO, Tesla, SPY, and the broader markets. I'll talk about some key levels to watch for as time goes on, and what I think is going to likely happen to NIO stock looking at the current setups. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free NVIDIA stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of NVIDIA. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of the stock, or deposits $50,000 to get $1,000 of free NVIDIA. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and the offer ends very soon. So please check out my link down below to sign up or use this QR code. Anyways, as far as NIO is going, as you could tell, we have this bullish divergence that's been developing, and we're getting a small bounce here. We dumped all the way down to 4.7, coming just short of my 4.5 targets, and now we're starting to rebound. I see NIO trying to test 5.11, if not 5.26, and then we're going to see if we get some kind of rejection. I also noticed that NIO seems to be moving the opposite of SPY and the QQQ. As they were just pumping and pumping and pumping for the past week, NIO was also basically just like dumping. And then all of a sudden today, when the market sort of like came down, we saw the QQQ come down, and the market was like down for the majority of the day. We saw NIO start to bounce. But once again, correlation does not mean causation. It's just one little observation I have. So what you're seeing right now is Maguire gave NIO a downgrade, unfortunately, because of the fears involving weakening demand for Envo, in their opinion. That's what they argued, at least so far. And they also said that they saw like a reduction in their overall guidance, and that made them once again a little bit more bearish. It's not the best of news that came out, and that's part of why I think NIO has been so weak. And then at the same time, when you look at their numbers, there was a bit of a decrease in their overall sales for the month of November, but hopefully things get better heading into December. Sorry about that. So we're going to see what happens as time goes on. Besides that, Freedom Capital Markets gave them a buy rating, but once again, we did get a sell rating from Maguire. And once again, the price-price ratio is still down. We're going to see if we bounce a little bit before continuing to fall. Now, heading into tomorrow, we do have this PCE data coming out, which could cause some volatility. So we'll see what that looks like, but it's only for the month of September. And right now, the overall market is more choppy heading into these big events. And I think that FOMC day, which is going to be in about 6 days from now, that's going to be more impactful for the markets, and that could be affecting NIO as well. So I think that we could bounce temporarily looking for 5.1, or basically a little bit above that. But then notice that every time we bounce, we kind of like bounce and reject, bounce and reject, bounce and reject. We need to get back above like 5.5 for this to be a bigger bounce. If we don't, we could be looking for a rejection near 5.25. And then there is this gap down here to fill at 4.8. So we could kind of bounce and reject. And that is very, very likely, in my opinion, for NIO stock. And that's all I'm really seeing for now. Now, as far as SPY and the QQQ are going, so far SPY has struggled to break past 685. And I think that there's a good chance that we might consolidate for some time before we potentially dip. And I still think that there is hope for that right shoulder before we get some kind of bounce. And that could be happening after FOMC. One final sell-off for the year before we start to squeeze. I do lean in favor of this. Same thing with the QQQ. Now we're still choppy, but we failed to break 625 again. We might push back up there, come back down, consolidate for another day or two. Then when FOMC comes, we're going to be watching to see if we form that right shoulder before we get that final big breakout. We'll be watching that very closely. On the IWM, we're going to see if we pull back first before it tries to bounce, but we're at resistance at 252. Could be returning to the 240s. On ES, we're pushing. We could be going a little bit higher, closer to like 6,900. We're just a few points away from that. Then we're going to see if we get some kind of rejection to form that right shoulder. I think there's a good chance of that happening. On NQ, the same thing is going on. We're slowly chopping for 25,800 before we turn back down to form that right shoulder. Bitcoin's also dipping a bit. We're going to see if we could hold at 91,680. If not, we're looking for the low 90,000s. Tesla, however, is looking more bullish with an inverse head and shoulders like pattern. And because we're above 450, we could continue to uptrend for 460 next. Overall, it looks more bullish. Nvidia is trying to bounce a little bit. It's also consolidating right here between 184 and 182. I think we consolidate for some time before we attempt to bounce higher. But overall, it's doing a good job at getting bought back up. Aapl, however, is showing some weakness, looking for 277 and then 275. On Palantir, We're a little bit more bullish, looking for like 180, and we'll see if we reject. AMD is forming a head and shoulders. We're going to see if we could form and hit 220. If not, we could be dumping back down towards 210. Coinbase is once again on a bit of an uptrend as well. We're looking for 270. We'll see if we bounce off this or not. Amazon's making lower highs. We have a head and shoulders, and this may continue to fall back down to 225. Meta has a nice wick right here, and it could be dipping back down towards this 650 area. Google, it's basically has this bullish falling wedge that formed before we got a bounce. But instead of continuing to break out, we got a rejection. There is a risk of us returning to 315. And then Microsoft is going to likely try to bounce for 483, and we'll see if it rejects from there. The VIX is still technically forming a falling wedge, but I do think that this will eventually get a break in the upcoming days. So we're just waiting for this. It may take a couple more days longer as we're still waiting for FOMC and other factors. With that being said, expect some more chop tomorrow for the markets, and then we'll see what happens by the time we get to FOMC. I think that's the next major catalyst we're waiting for. And for NIO, there's a slight divergence, so we could be going a bit higher for 5.1 to 5.25. But once we get to those levels, we'll be looking for a rejection because there is still this gap to fill back down to 4.7. All right, so unfortunately, NIO is still weak as we're getting some sell ratings from analysts. But overall, I still see a lot of potential in the company longer term, and we just have to give it more time and patience. Thank you for listening. Peace out.